First published in 1813, Pride and Prejudice remains one of Jane Austen's most beloved and enduring works. Jane Austen, celebrated as a master of English literature, had a remarkable gift for blending humor, insight, and social critique in her novels. The story is set in the picturesque English countryside during the Regency era, a time when wealth, social status, and marriage were paramount. Austen uses this setting to craft a compelling narrative that not only entertains but also critiques the rigid societal norms of her time. Through her rich characters and intricate plot, she explores the challenges of navigating relationships and personal growth in a world defined by tradition and expectation. At its heart, Pride and Prejudice is a tale of love, first impressions, and the transformative power of understanding. The novel introduces us to Elizabeth Bennet, a quick-witted and independent young woman. As she grapples with family obligations, romantic misunderstandings, and her evolving feelings for the reserved yet intriguing Mr. Darcy. Austen's sharp observations and timeless themes continue to resonate with readers, offering both a window into 19th century English society and lessons that remain relevant today. Now, let's dive into the story and uncover the twists, turns, and unforgettable moments that make this novel a classic. The story begins in the quiet countryside of Hertfordshire, where the Bennet family resides. The Bennets are an eccentric but loving family with 5 daughters: Jane, Elizabeth, the protagonist, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia. Their mother, Mrs. Bennet, is obsessed with marrying off her daughters to wealthy gentlemen, while Mr. Bennet, a witty and sarcastic man, often teases her relentless matchmaking efforts. Excitement fills the air when news spreads that the nearby Netherfield Park has been rented by a wealthy young bachelor, Mr. Charles Bingley. Described as charming, kind, and good-natured, Mr. Bingley quickly becomes the talk of the town. Mrs. Bennet is determined to introduce her daughters to him, hoping for a match that would secure their futures. The much-anticipated meeting occurs at a local ball, where Mr. Bingley makes a striking impression. He is immediately taken with Jane Bennet, the eldest and most gentle of the sisters. The two share a natural connection, and their blossoming affection is evident to everyone in the room. However, the arrival of Mr. Bingley's close friend, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, casts a shadow over the evening. Tall, handsome, and immensely wealthy, Mr. Darcy initially captures the attention of the crowd, but his aloof demeanor and apparent disdain for socializing quickly sour their opinion of him. When Elizabeth Bennet overhears Darcy dismiss her as tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me, she feels both insulted and amused. This moment sets the stage for her initial dislike of Darcy, interpreting his pride as arrogance and coldness. Despite the tension between Elizabeth and Darcy, their personalities begin to stand out in contrast. Elizabeth is lively, witty, and unafraid to speak her mind, while Darcy remains reserved, guarded, and seemingly judgmental. Their first encounter highlights not only their differences, but also the misunderstandings that will define much of their early relationship. As the Bennets and the local community buzz with talk of Mr. Bingley and Darcy, the seeds of affection and prejudice are sown. Jane and Bingley's romance appears to be heading in a promising direction, while Elizabeth's sharp observations and quick judgments solidify her initial opinion of Darcy. As life in Hertfordshire progresses, the social circle around the Bennet family begins to expand, bringing new faces and greater complexities. Among the new arrivals is Mr. George Wickham, a charming and seemingly amiable officer in the militia. Wickham quickly captures the attention of Elizabeth Bennet with his friendly demeanor and engaging conversation. During one of their early interactions, Wickham shares a troubling story about Mr. Darcy, painting him as a cruel and selfish man. Wickham claims that Darcy unjustly deprived him of a clergyman's position that Darcy's late father had promised him. This revelation deepens Elizabeth's dislike for Darcy, confirming her perception of him as proud and unkind. Wickham's charisma and apparent honesty contrast starkly with Darcy's reserved nature, making Wickham an appealing figure in Elizabeth's eyes. Meanwhile, Jane Bennet and Mr. Bingley continue to grow closer, but their happiness is short-lived. Bingley abruptly leaves for London, seemingly without explanation. Elizabeth suspects the influence of Bingley's sisters and Mr. Darcy, both of whom view Jane as an unsuitable match due to her lower social standing. This departure leaves Jane heartbroken and further fuels Elizabeth's resentment toward Darcy, whom she blames for interfering in her sister's relationship. Elizabeth's interactions with Darcy take an unexpected turn when she visits her recently married friend, Charlotte Lucas, at the home of Charlotte's husband, Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is a distant cousin of the Bennets and the heir to their family estate due to the entailment laws. Though pompous and overly deferential to his benefactor, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Mr. Collins provides Elizabeth an opportunity to encounter Darcy once again. During her stay, Elizabeth is astonished when Darcy suddenly confesses his love for her and proposes marriage. However, his proposal is far from ideal. While admitting his admiration for Elizabeth, Darcy also highlights the obstacles posed by her lower social status and the impropriety of her family. Instead of conveying affection, his words come across as condescending, leaving Elizabeth offended and furious. In her rejection, Elizabeth does not hold back. She accuses Darcy of arrogance, interference in Jane and Bingley's relationship, and mistreatment of Wickham. Darcy listens in stunned silence but does not attempt to deny her accusations in the moment. His pride, so central to his identity, has been deeply wounded by Elizabeth's passionate refusal. Shortly after the proposal, Darcy delivers a letter to Elizabeth, seeking to explain his actions. In the letter, he reveals the truth behind Wickham's accusations. Wickham had squandered the financial support Darcy's father left him, and later attempted to elope with Darcy's younger sister, Georgiana, in a scheme to access her fortune. Darcy's letter also clarifies his role in separating Jane and Bingley. While he admits to influencing Bingley, he did so out of concern that Jane's affections were not strong enough to ensure a stable match. Elizabeth is shocked and conflicted by Darcy's revelations. Wickham's charm now seems hollow, and Darcy's actions, though flawed, appear less malicious than she first believed. For the first time, Elizabeth begins to question her own judgments, recognizing that her prejudice against Darcy may have blinded her to his true character. As Elizabeth Bennet reflects on Mr. Darcy's letter and the truths it unveils, she begins to see her own shortcomings more clearly. Her initial certainty about Darcy's character and Wickham's honesty now seems rash, and her judgment of Darcy's actions regarding Jane and Bingley feels increasingly complex. While her resentment softens, she is still unsure how to reconcile these revelations with her feelings. Elizabeth's journey takes an unexpected turn when she joins her aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, on a trip through Derbyshire. During their travels, they visit Pemberley, the grand estate of none other than Mr. Darcy himself. Elizabeth is initially reluctant to visit, fearing an awkward encounter, but she is reassured upon learning that Darcy is away. The grandeur of Pemberley leaves Elizabeth in awe. The estate reflects not only Darcy's immense wealth, but also a sense of refined taste and responsibility. As she tours the house, she hears glowing praise of Darcy from the housekeeper, who describes him as a kind and generous master. This description starkly contrasts with the arrogant figure Elizabeth first encountered. To her surprise, Darcy himself appears at Pemberley, having returned home unexpectedly. Their meeting is awkward at first, but Darcy is remarkably polite and composed. His behavior is vastly different from before. He is gracious to Elizabeth and warmly welcomes her relatives, showing none of the pride or aloofness that once defined him. This interaction leaves Elizabeth deeply unsettled, as it challenges her previous perceptions of him even further. Over the following days, Darcy continues to display a newfound humility and attentiveness. He goes out of his way to ensure Elizabeth and her relatives feel welcome, even inviting Mr. Gardiner to fish at Pemberley. Elizabeth begins to see a side of Darcy that is thoughtful, caring, and respectful, a stark contrast to the man who once insulted her family and proposed so awkwardly. Darcy's actions reach a peak of selflessness when Elizabeth's youngest sister, Lydia, elopes with the deceitful Mr. Wickham. This scandal threatens to ruin the Bennet family's reputation, and Elizabeth is overwhelmed with despair. When Darcy learns of the situation, he quietly intervenes, using his influence and wealth to locate the couple and ensure their marriage, thereby restoring the Bennet's social standing. He does all of this without seeking recognition, wanting only to ease Elizabeth's burden. When Elizabeth discovers the extent of Darcy's involvement, she is moved by his generosity and sense of duty. His actions reveal a depth of character and integrity that she had previously overlooked. Her admiration for Darcy grows, and she begins to question not only her previous judgments but also her own feelings. The visit to Pemberley and Darcy's subsequent actions mark a turning point in Elizabeth's understanding of him. She realizes that Darcy is not the man she first thought he was. His pride, once so off-putting, is now tempered by humility, and his affection for her is evident in his deeds rather than mere words. The elopement of Lydia Bennet with Mr. Wickham sends shockwaves through the Bennet family. For a family of modest means and fragile social standing, such a scandal threatens not only Lydia's reputation, but also the future prospects of her sisters. Elizabeth is devastated, knowing that this disgrace could ruin Jane's chances with Mr. Bingley and extinguish any hope for her own happiness. Unbeknownst to Elizabeth, Mr. Darcy takes it upon himself to resolve the crisis. Moved by his love for Elizabeth and a sense of responsibility, Darcy sets out to find Lydia and Wickham. He uncovers their location in London and persuades Wickham to marry Lydia by paying off his debts and providing a financial settlement. Darcy ensures that all of this is done discreetly, taking no credit for his actions and allowing Mr. Gardiner, Elizabeth's uncle, to appear as the benefactor. When Elizabeth learns of Darcy's intervention through Lydia's careless boasting, she is overwhelmed by a mix of gratitude and admiration. Darcy's actions reveal his deep care for her and her family, as well as his willingness to set aside his pride for her happiness. This unselfish act cements Elizabeth's growing affection for him and changes the way she sees their relationship. With Lydia's crisis resolved, the social atmosphere begins to recover, and Mr. Bingley returns to Netherfield. Encouraged by Darcy, who admits to interfering in their earlier separation, Bingley proposes to Jane. Overjoyed, Jane accepts, and the couple's love story finally reaches its happy conclusion. The engagement brings a wave of happiness to the Bennet household, though Elizabeth finds herself pondering her own unresolved feelings for Darcy. Darcy and Elizabeth's next meeting occurs when Darcy and Bingley visit Longbourn. This time, their interactions are free from the misunderstandings that clouded their earlier encounters. Darcy's manner is respectful and gentle, and Elizabeth, having shed her own prejudices, is more open and warm. During a private walk, Darcy expresses his continued feelings for Elizabeth, but with a humility and vulnerability that contrast starkly with his first proposal. He tells her that his love remains unchanged, but assures her that he will respect her wishes if she does not return his feelings. Elizabeth, now fully aware of Darcy's true character and moved by his kindness and perseverance, accepts his proposal with genuine affection. The novel concludes with Elizabeth and Darcy's marriage, a union built on mutual respect, understanding, and love. Elizabeth's sharp wit and independent spirit complement Darcy's steadfastness and integrity, creating a partnership that defies the societal norms of their time. Through their journey, both characters undergo profound personal growth. Darcy learns to temper his pride and open his heart, while Elizabeth learns to question her own judgments and embrace the complexities of others. Their story demonstrates the transformative power of love, forgiveness, and self-awareness. As the Bennet family celebrates two happy marriages, Jane and Bingley, Elizabeth and Darcy, the tale of Pride and Prejudice comes full circle. What began with misunderstandings and conflict blossoms into reconciliation and joy, leaving readers with a timeless lesson. True love is built on understanding and growth, not just first impressions.